Welcome to Jack's Corner, where conservative values meet national headlines, and truth and reality have a seat at the table. From Louisville, Kentucky, here's your host, Jack Richardson.
Well, folks, welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality has a seat at the table. Now, that tagline is not just meant to sound good, it's the key to a successful and prosperous life. Truth brings life, and the lie brings death, and always has, basically since the Garden of Eden. And we all know that. The lie cannot prove itself. You hear me talk about the Democrats a lot, but it's not for partisan reasons. It is because they have been consumed with evil and the lie. Just listen to them for a week and go fact check them. You cannot find truth. I'm really just kind of amazed at how the, journalists, the media, reporters fail to confront them about what is so obviously a lie. Now, I remember a time in my youth when we never had the fear that if a Democrat won, we would be in mortal danger of losing our freedoms and our national security would be at risk. That is not the case anymore. Everything the party stands for today is a payoff to the deviance of society. They preach a false compassion and they deceive you with platitudes designed to weaken, if not remove, your freedoms. Moreover, we are faced with radical judges who will twist, if not make up laws to punish you if you do not fit into their leftist narrative. So remember, in the last 100 days of Trump's presidency, you have not heard the Democrats say anything positive, particularly with regard to your number one issue, immigration. Trump fixed that and fixed what the Democrats lied to you about in the preceding 4 years. Think about that. They told you that the border could not be fixed without some kind of extravagant and complicated legislative fix. Trump fixed it in 60 days. What have you done to hold the Democrats accountable for that lie? That's massive, folks. They let over almost 20 million people into this country. They opened our borders, and many of them are criminals. Think about that. The Democrats told you that President Biden was as mentally sharp as ever, even though you could see with your own eyes that he was not. That's called gaslighting you. They're trying to make you believe that what your eyes are seeing, what your ears are hearing, is not real. They conspired against a people and a nation. They must be punished and held accountable. Name anything the Democrats have proposed that is good for the nation and our society. Good for the nation or our security. You can't find anything but their hatred for Trump, Republicans, and common sense people, and they will run over your freedoms to do that. So, folks, you've seen, and I've just pointed out to you, the two biggest lies that have been proffered and pushed on us over the last couple of years as Biden was winding down his presidency and trying to make you believe that what you were seeing was not true. That was gaslighting. The only way to prosper and the only way to live a free life is to live in the truth. I want to live in a country where everyone around me is happy and prosperous. That's where you find the greatest security. That is why this podcast and my website is free. I'm giving back, hoping to free as many as I can from the shackles of the Democrat lies so they can share in the American dream. So that you will know that I'm not a partisan hack, I want to deal with another topic here, and that is what I call the problem with Republicans. Like the Keystone Cops, some Republicans just can't seem to understand the term unity and team play. In a recent article in Breitbart News, it was headlined that Senator Thom Tillis, a Republican senator from North Carolina, he is withholding support for President Donald Trump's nominee for U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. That's a move that could result in what they call the MAGA villain, Judge James Boasberg, choosing who gets to fill that role. This is he could potentially appoint former special counsel Jack Smith. This is not the first time Tillis has been a pain in the rear to the Republican unity, and it could do serious harm and damage to Trump and the party. His conduct is reckless, and it should not be forgotten that when the primaries come around in North Carolina, I hope people take the opportunity, particularly Republicans, to primary him. In fact, he is considered very vulnerable for defeat in his upcoming primary, and I do pray he gets defeated. I'm tired of dealing with him because he's not a team player, and he's basically gives too much to the other side, the opposition, on key and critical votes. Remember, this Judge Boasberg, who blocked Trump's deportation, the very thing, the number one issue that you voted for Trump for to do, this Democrat radical leftist judge will get to a point who sits in that position as a district attorney in D.C. And who's helping him or giving him potential aid and comfort? It's Senator Tillis, a Republican. Well, there's another Republican just like Tillis, and that's Senator John Cornyn of Texas. He's another one of these low testosterone, wishy-washy men who seem to be wanted and liked by those who will never like them or agree with them. Yep, and that what we're talking about there is the Democrats. I once said that the Republican Party needs a national psychologist because too many in the Republican Party seem to need and want to be liked by the left, who will never agree with them, never vote for them, would never give them any quarter. I think that's a psychosis. Well, anyway, Cornyn is double digits behind the Attorney General Paxton in Texas in a primary, and I pray that the Republican Party will be cleansed of his type as well. So what is the issue with the D.C. District Attorney post? Well, it is one of the most influential, if not the most influential, as to the power that can be exerted to stop Trump's agenda. After all, as I said, the federal district judge there, Boasberg, who is one of the most radical and leftist judges appointed by Biden, is trying to stop Trump's deportation of illegal immigrants that Biden opened our borders to. That's serious business. And if the Republicans don't get off their rears in the Senate and appoint someone, Boasberg will. Seeing how this small group of impotent Republican senators were opposing a stellar conservative for the job, Trump circled around and picked former Judge Jeanine Pirro, one of the hosts of Fox The Five, as an interim DA. That's great. Now, those interim appointments don't last long. The Senate is still going to have to confirm or do a confirmation of an appointment. And that will still be needed in the months ahead, but we have dodged another bullet, no thanks to these weak Republicans. It's fine to have a difference of opinion on a given issue, but given the nature of the opposition of the enemy on the left that Republicans in this country face, once you have expressed yourself and you see that you are nearly a lone actor, then it's time to shut up and get with the program. Unite and join your colleagues. I spoke with CNN's token conservative, Scott Jennings, at dinner here in Louisville last Friday night, and he too was echoing the theme that Republicans need to be united as the Democrats never break rank. Now, I would say this to some of these Republicans in Congress and in the Senate. If you're one of those who have a certain pet issue or you have a certain ideology, some are libertarian, and if your vote's going to be inconsequential other than giving Democrats a victory, then you're really aiding and abetting your opposition. And I'm saying this to you folks out there listening to this. You have to call your congressmen and your senators up when they get weak, and you've got to give them an earful. It really does work. I've been up there, and I've been at the receiving end of letters and phone calls and so forth, and it does. I took a tally of who was for or against on certain issues, and it does have an impact. The problem with too many on the right side of the spectrum is they are AWOL. It's like in war. If you don't agree with your commanding officer on a strategy, once he's made his decision, your strategy is not going to prevail. And you just don't say, well, I'm not going to fight now. I'm just going to put down my gun and not fight. Well, do that and you get court-martialed, if not shot. In politics, you need to be primaried out and voted out of office if you're not going to be a team player. There's a time for unity. Yes, there's a time to make your voice heard and your opposition to a certain piece of legislation. But once you see that you're maybe only one or two of the Republicans that are against a piece of legislation, then to what purpose, to what end? This is what I hope happens with Tillis, because the consequences of his opposition brought us dangerously close to, and disastrously so, to having a radical like Boasberg make the appointment. But this is not the first time he has gone rogue on critical votes. That is unforgivable, and that calls for accountability in the form of removal. There are others, such as Senator Cassidy, for example, of Louisiana, who voted for Trump's conviction after impeachment. Here's another sanctimonious Republican, oblivious as to the real enemy. Then you have Senator Lankford of Oklahoma, who co-sponsored the immigration reform bill during Biden's term, which would have legalized over 8,500 illegals coming into the country per day. Imagine that. I can't imagine any Republican, sane Republican, allowing and being a co-sponsor of a bill like that. Now, his idiocy contends, in the midst of Trump's trying to get the border under control, that the illegal immigrants deserve due process. That's where he is now. How do you have trials for 21 million people? If they are here illegally, they have no right to the access to the courts. That would take hundreds of years to process. Everyone would be dead before you could process that many. Let's take for an example, let's take Kentucky and many other states in this country. If you have not lived and resided in that state at least 180 days, you have no access to the courts and must take your claim back to the state of your origin or where you have citizenship. The only due process the illegals have is to be shipped back to their country of origin, which is frankly more equity than they deserve, as in most other countries, guess what? You go to jail. Then you have, as I have reported on before, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who was the sole vote out of 218 Republican House members against the president's budget, which is critical to restoring the economy. Otherwise, all Republicans will suffer mass losses in the midterm elections, and it will do incredible damage to the country. Again, I asked him, and I ask you, to what end was his solo vote other than upending Trump's agenda for economic renewal in the country? He and other rogue Republicans simply can't explain it. If the truth be known, they are captive to an ideology outside of which they are clueless. So many people hide behind theories and philosophies to hide their, and here I go again, and I'm going to say it, their stupidity. Folks, stop hiring stupid people to lead you. In fact, it's time for those who are cognitively proficient to exercise their civic duties and to make a sacrifice to intergovernment in service for the good of us all, and most likely for their own family. There are also other Republicans who are ignorant of the concept of team play and cooperation, given that the enemy we have in our opposition. Some of these Republicans just oppose to oppose. There is nothing to be gained by their obstinance, only loss. They cannot point to one thing that is accomplished by their opposition and siding with the Democrats. And to prove further how absurd they are, it is clear they would not find any safe harbor with the Democrats. It is truly amazing the ineptness of some within the Republican Party who do not understand the term team play and unity in the face of overwhelming opposition. It's sickening and outrageous. It's truly a reflection of not only a lack of intellect, but wisdom or the absence of it. Fortunately, the Republican Party in Louisiana censored Cassidy, which is exactly what they should have done. They held him accountable and let him know that he does not have free rein to do as he pleases or to stray from the Republican principles. He's up there to serve, not to be served. When on the battlefield, you don't get into debates with your commanding officer about philosophy or theory. You obey commands to save your butt as well as your fellow soldiers. The rigidity to principle, theory, or philosophy when in an existential battle is, for me, incomprehensible, particularly when your vote comes to nowhere near making a difference in advancing your issue. Now I want to move into my favorite topic, as you know, which is judicial reform, and it is needed in the judiciary as well as the jury system. As I have said before, I want to get rid of the wearing of black robes. Yeah, I want to outlaw judges wearing black robes. By the way, what kind of message does that send to the people? You don't see people in Congress wearing wigs. You don't see senators wearing black robes. You don't see anybody else doing it. So again, what kind of message does that send to the people? I can tell you, it is in the final analysis meant to lead you to believe that their judgments are like God, like God's unquestionable and infallible judgments. Well, if that is the case, have you ever asked the obvious question, if they are so smart and their judgments are so infallible, why do we have so many courts of appeal and even a Supreme Court? And why do we have so many reversals, even at the Supreme Court level? It's because they are not what the black robes connote. We must question and hold accountable judges whose decisions are always under review and often reversed. We must be able to get rid of them and not through the arcane process of impeachment. Now, what about the juries and the jurors? Well, the bias there is unbelievable. In a survey, black jurors show a 50-point swing based on the race of the defendants. So, for example, if you are a white defendant, guilt will be found 73% of the time from blacks compared to 39% for white jurors. Remember, our law is designed such that it is better to let a guilty man go free than an innocent man be found guilty and imprisoned. Now, if the defendant is black, then only 24% of the black jurors will find guilt, and the white jurors will only find a few points higher at 32%. You can see the disparity. Other surveys have shown that jurors today see their job as sending a message to society, and their judgment has little to do with the facts or the case. This is dangerous, folks. It is lawless, and it will lead to anarchy. No one in this country should ever be faced with a trial by jury or a judge or before the courts and expect anything but the utmost unbiased and fairest in treatment. But not today. Today, the courts and the juries are your greatest threat. If you fit into certain categories, your chances of fairness is limited. I've talked to insurance executives, and most of the time, they will settle out for policy limits as opposed to facing a jury due to the profound biases of jurors who treat the court system as their opportunity to spin the wheel of fortune for some plaintiffs or exact punishment on others, particularly of a certain class or identity. This has to change, and has to change now. Now, I've talked about that, and the justice system has to change, and we've got a real problem, not only with the judges, but in the way that the law is applied and with the way that judgments come down, particularly with jurors. I've talked about it in other articles and podcasts, but it is a real problem. The surveys show it's a real problem, even within the legal community. I've seen the surveys, and any attorney worth his salt will avoid the jury. Okay, now I know it's my favorite topic, and I talk about it all the time, but believe me, as an attorney of 45 years, I have seen the injustices that comes out of juries and out of the courts and out of the court system, and nobody should have to be faced with that. And that's the one area in our society today and in our governance that is the weakest and the most dangerous to you and your freedoms, and you should not have to face that. So that's got to be worked on. But not to bloviate more in that area, I want to move on to another, what I call the most wonderful word, as Trump has called it, and that is tariffs. Now, isn't it a shame that the Democrats want Trump to fail? That's right, and you see it every day if you're watching the news and if you're watching some stations. They create fear in you so as to short-circuit the cure that Trump is applying to the economy that Biden destroyed. Think about this. When you are sick, the doctor will prescribe for you a medication, and on the label, it will tell you to be sure to finish the bottle of medicine. Now, I know some of you short-circuit it and stop before you have finished, and then what happens? You relapse. It takes time to heal and cure from an illness. So how disingenuous is it for you or anyone else to expect Trump to fix in 100 days what it took the Democrats 4 years to destroy? But you listen to these talking heads on TV, and you never challenge them with that. Wait a minute. You're saying that he didn't bring down the price of eggs on day 2 of his administration? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with them? Well, you need to hold them accountable, but maybe you need to hold yourself and your attitudes accountable too, because it's unreasonable for you to expect that kind of quick change. Give the man a chance. So let's say, for example, what if you started a job and your boss said, okay, you have 24 hours to master this job or you're fired? That is exactly what the Democrats are wanting you to do with Trump, and they are getting leftist radical judges to keep Trump from succeeding. Why? Because if Trump succeeds in making the country well again, they have no chance of getting back into power. Isn't that horrible that the Democrats, for their own selfish ambition, would want the country and you to fail and suffer, all because of their own selfish lust for power, when they don't and never have had any answers for the problems we face? In fact, it was them that created the problems. They can't fix what they caused. In the last 100 days, Trump has fixed the borders, brought in trillions of dollars of investments into the country. Trade deals are now being signed. Men are out of women's sports. DEI is being removed. That is, that reverse racism is being removed from corporations and corporate America and government. We are back in control of the Panama Canal, not China. We just got the last hostage back from Hamas. Ukraine is on the cusp of resolution. Trump brought about a ceasefire in a war that was starting up between 2 nuclear powers. That's India and Pakistan. Remember, Trump is basically the peacemaking president. And remember, in his first term, there was no war. And now think about this. The markets are up, and he has just ordered drug prices to come down equal to those in Europe and what Europeans pay. For instance, for Wegovy or Ozempic, the Europeans pay $88, but Americans pay, guess what, $1,300. And the Democrats hate that because Trump gets done what they can't. Now we are seeing that Trump's tariff strategy is working, and the markets are going up and up and up. Just a few weeks ago, that below-average IQ Hakeem Jeffries, who is the House leader for the Democrats, said that Trump was destroying the economy. They scared many of you, and so you sold off your assets or you sold your stocks in fear that the market was going down, and yes, you pulled the market down on yourself. And now you realized, what a mistake. And you lost money because of what the Democrats were doing. They scared you. They made you panic, and you sold. And you gave me and others one of the biggest blue light specials ever. And as you were selling, I and many others were buying as the market was going down. And then the next week it went up 3,000 points. You know, a dog goes back to his vomit. So you've got to stop going back to the Democrats and all their fear tactics and all their lies. Others knew that the Democrats were lying, and they did not believe them, and they didn't panic. Now they are reaping the benefits and they're reaping the profits. Never forget that the Democrats historically have brought you poverty, and not just always in money, but in so many other ways. If you lost money in the last few weeks, remember how the Democrats played you to gain favor with you. But instead, it cost you. So apply that lesson in the future when you hear a Democrat tell you the sky is falling. Okay, folks, well, that's it for today. Don't forget to check the numerous articles on bluegrasschronicles.com. And until next time, I'm Jack Richardson, and this is Jack's Corner.